Go lives.
What's that?
I've gone live, so I don't know if you.
Oh, sure, yeah, let me see.
So,
Do. It's gonna be one of these. Do. Nada.
no,
It's okay.
haven't
This
come
will
up
be
with the
fine.
controls. Bizarre.
Jason had these Visual Studio puzzles left over from Chicago Code Camp.
Oh, cool.
Give them away to people.
Yeah, and I got some books. Do we have a sign-in sheet or anything that we passed around? Should we just send her? Do you have like a piece of paper we
I
can
was
hand
going to
out?
just count. Oh yeah, we could do a piece
Just
of paper.
that way we could just.
Okay. I have a spreadsheet too.
I'll
Could
just.
do the meetup spreadsheet and random. Up to you guys.
I'm not, yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah. Oh yeah, if you got that, that'd be perfect actually.
Or we can just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and just.
Sure, yeah. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger. If you like, eeny, meeny, miny. How you're at? Should we go?
John, do you want to? Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming. So yeah, thank you very much to Mike for presenting Signal Wearables on how to develop apps for Android Wear and the Apple Watch and WatchKit with Xamarin. And also like to thank John and West.Monroe Partners again for hosting us yet again and providing refreshments, food and beer. That's always nice. Couple of quick housekeeping items. The restrooms are, if you haven't been here before, just go out the door, cross the corridor, and to the right there's an opening and there's 2 restrooms there you can use. Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi password is up here and also back there, but it's the network is GoWest underscore guest, and the password is WMP GoWest, all one word.
All lowercase. Okay, so without any further ado, let's just hand over to John to say a few words about West.Monroe Partners.
Like Dave said, my name is John Sprunger. I lead our mobility practice here at West.Monroe Partners. If you're not familiar with West.Monroe, we're a full-service business and technology consulting firm headquartered downtown here in Chicago. We've got about 500 employees across West.Monroe and about a team of about 50 to 60 developers that work on custom applications, systems integration, business intelligence, all that good stuff, mobile apps using Xamarin. That's what we all like to do. We've got a number of open positions in our infrastructure practice and our technology practice. They're on a sheet around here. So everything from BizTalk, Salesforce, SharePoint, networking, servers, infrastructure, help desk, positions from entry level to senior leaders. So if you're looking, or if you know anybody else who's looking, your kids, your cousin, your buddy, come talk to me or somebody else that works for West.Monroe, like Jason. And I know these guys are hiring too, Mike and Deepon. Everybody's hiring.
Everybody's hiring. It's a good time.
Yeah, I don't know. We might do it around the horn later at the end, see if anybody else is hiring too. So,
Awesome.
thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, so go ahead and jump in. Today's topic, right, is armed and ready wearables for iOS and Android using Xamarin's tooling. For anybody who's new here, my name is Mike. I work at a company named 8bot. We do mobile stuff mostly. It's a picture of me. Everybody's probably seen this already, my big face, smiling, right? From last year when I saw the sun. Been doing Xamarin for a long time, Xamarin MVP, blah, 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 blah. If anybody's looking for a job, can talk to me, blah, 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 blah. Whatever, talk about that later. In any case, we're here to talk about wearables, right? What are wearables? Probably one that everybody is most familiar with. I'm going to talk too fast. We've got our Apple Watch out here, right? This is a brand new Apple Watch. Super fun, super exciting. We've got our Android wearables. I've got that one on my wrist here. It's a Moto 360. We've got the original wearable. That is the Predator, for anybody who's not familiar. The greatest movie ever. Yes. But that is my original wearable here. And it is also undoubtedly the greatest action movie of all time. I'll sit here and debate anybody all night. But in any case, wearables have a huge opportunity. So if you remember back a few years when, kind of mobile was first coming around, people weren't so, sure about it, and then all of a sudden, boom, everybody had an Android phone or an iOS phone. If we kind of look at the graphs here, these are the projected user bases for wearables in the next few years. So if you look at the previous year, we're talking about 18 million people. If we go forward all the way to 2019, though, we're talking 101 million people just in watches alone. So they call those wrist wearables, but that's just in watches alone. We're talking about over 100 million people. If you look at all other wearables, they're expecting about 25 million other wearables. So I'm not sure what other wearables all include. I assume it's things like other bracelets, headgear. Maybe that's like Google Glass, the Google belt buckle, which if you guys didn't hear, did you guys hear that was announced earlier today at I/O?
I know.
No, I'm making that up. But that's all other wearables, right? So, obviously there is a huge opportunity here in watches and things like that coming up in the near future. So it's a really great time to be into it. So today what we're going to be talking about is a few things, 3 basic topics. We've got our WatchKit out there, so we're going to talk a little bit about WatchKit. I'll introduce it to you. I'll give you an idea of what it takes to develop an application using WatchKit. Then we'll look at Android Wear, same kind of thing, see what it takes to develop an application in Android Wear. And then finally, we'll just talk about some tips and some thoughts on developing for these platforms and how to kind of build things the right way and some things to consider along the way there. All right, so we're going to start out here today by diving into WatchKit. Topics we'll cover, just kind of getting started, user interface, controls, and development itself. Okay, so a few things to know here about WatchKit apps. So as it stands today, WatchKit apps have to exist with an iOS application. You can't just build WatchKit apps. You can't just build applications that run on the watch by themselves. The expectation is that will be something that's added later on. Apple's already kind of made some comments that maybe later this year, maybe early next year, they'll offer some of that functionality. But as it stands today, if you're looking to build a WatchKit application, you also still need to build an iOS application with it. And so when we build these applications, they basically come into 3 parts then. We have our WatchKit app, we have our WatchKit extensions, which kind of sit in between the two, and then finally we have our container application. All right, our container app is what you expect it to be. Okay, it is just an iOS application. There's nothing exactly fancy with it. You just need to have a host application. Realistically, when we're looking to build out our application, this is going to be doing a lot more for us, and I'll explain that here in just a moment. But we must, like I said, we must build this container application. You can't get away with just having a WatchKit app at this current time. Next thing we have is our WatchKit extensions. And so those WatchKit extensions are essentially our glue. The most important piece, like I said, I'll get to this in just a second. This is kind of the most important piece of our WatchKit apps as is. Our WatchKit extensions are where we run all of our code for our app, right? So the watches themselves are really just there for display. These extensions reach back out to your phone or your device, do all your calculations there, and then bring that data back to the phone itself. Okay. It's also a place where you'd want to put things like your larger resources. So if you have images that you want to show in your app, or any kind of large, file or whatever you might have, I can't think of anything else besides images. You put those all into your extensions, and those will be housed in the phone or on the phone. One key thing to note about WatchKit extensions, though, is that there are no visual elements to this. It's purely just for back-end code. So when you're doing these extensions, it's where you're going to put all your stuff for, all your calculations, like I said, all your business logic and whatnot are going to go into those extensions there. The applications themselves, the WatchKit apps themselves, then, are a very small part of everything that you build out. Okay, it's the only part that gets installed onto the phone, and essentially all they are is an iOS storyboard. So if you're familiar with doing iOS development, the only way you could do WatchKit apps right now, this will probably once again change in the future, is by using their storyboard designer. We have access to it in Xamarin's tooling, so we could actually build it in things like Xamarin Studio. But you must build the user interface using a storyboard. That means, all those cool constraints and all that other stuff that we just learned as iOS developers no longer applies out here. But anyway, still, it's nice and easy, drag and drop and all that kind of stuff. And then the only other thing that you'll want to put in your WatchKit app besides your user interface element are just small resources. So if you have icons or kind of status symbols, status type icons that you want to include in your application, you'll put those in your WatchKit app as well. So they're very simple. The extensions really are doing all of the hard work for us. These are all the controls that we have available to us then. You can see it's kind of a subset of all the controls that we would have had available to us in iOS. We've got a lot of the big ones, buttons, dates, maps are kind of neat that you could actually put maps on there. For the most part, if you're building an application, I think it'll probably end up being a table, maybe a timer, and some buttons, you know, but you've got a pretty good control set. Just keep in mind, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on, you are dealing with a pretty small form factor. So it's not like you're developing for iOS 6, you know, iPhone 6, or not iOS, iPhone 6 giant phone device, or an iPad or something like that. It's just this small little rectangle on your wrist. So don't go too crazy about putting all those controls on there. WatchKit app development is supported in Xamarin Studio, in Visual Studio as well, I believe. But you can actually start up and build brand new projects in there with the latest version of Xamarin's tools. So you can open it up, build your storyboards, get everything set just like you would if you were developing a regular iOS application using Xamarin's tooling. So it's pretty straightforward. All right, key things here. So if you are starting up a new project, you'll see you do have to link it up to an existing app. So if we kind of look here, it's a little bit hard to read, so I apologize. But if you see here, when you're looking to build your WatchKit app, you must have an existing iOS application. So when you get to this point, even when you're going through their their wizard for creating a new WatchKit app, you do have to link it up to an existing iOS application. So just keep that in mind. You can't get away with just building a WatchKit app by itself right now. Yep. Forward, sorry. All right, there we go. Cool. So sounds good. Let's actually take a look at what it takes to build a WatchKit application then. So like I said, I'll switch back here to Xamarin Studio. And let me expand this out a little bit, or a lot bit, or none bit. You could do it, little fella. It's like 1 pixel in size. Get it? No. All right, I apologize. It's maxing out. I don't know if it's because kind of on a low resolution display, so I apologize, but kind of get the idea here. You can see if I were to go into my project here, we'll just start up a new, we'll add a new project in here so we can see that wizard one more time. But if we go into our solution, we could do a new project. And right out there underneath our iOS templates, if you go to extension, you can see you could build out that WatchKit app. Right? It's the same, just basically a couple of wizards that we saw out there before, but pretty easy to get in there and build out your new application. Once you add in a WatchKit app, you're going to get a few things. I'll do my best to kind of navigate around here. You'll see you'll have our main iOS application. In this case, I just made a little app called Mood Watch. It's this awesome app idea. Nobody better steal it. Every 5 seconds, it will change the face of the watch to a different color and update the time. You probably make millions of dollars on this. Nobody's ever thought of a watch face that does it. Anyway, it's a pretty dumb app. But anyway, it gives you an idea of what's going on there, right? So we've got Mood Watch out here, which is our host application. And then we've got our WatchKit app and our extensions. So let's take a little look here at the app first to get an idea of what goes into it. Like I said, I apologize, it's a little bit crunched up here, but we'll work around it. The app is pretty simplistic. It's really just user interface definitions and then small resources and things like that. So if we look at the project file itself, you can see I've got my resources out here. I've got some app icons and things like that, but just kind of some simple resources that we'd have for iOS. We've got some other, I'll call these kind of boilerplate pieces that we need for iOS applications. Our entitlements and our info plist there. And the only other thing that we really have out here then is our storyboard. And I'll give that a second here to load up. Thinking about it. There we go. We've got our storyboard here, which contains our user interface elements. Okay, and you can see there's kind of three different paths that we have out here. The first path that we have, just want to make sure, got the right one. Yep, there we go. Our first path that we have out here is for building an interface for notifications, right? So there's kind of 3 different types of displays that we could build for our WatchKit apps right now. The first one here are for notifications. So if you have something that you want to communicate to your user, hey user, you've walked 50 miles today, or you walked 500 steps, congratulations. You could build a simple interface to push those notifications. And the idea behind notifications is that they're just there to be shown to the user, dismissed, and you could go into the application from there if you want to see more information. Kind of just a quick, easy way to show you some information. Or if you want the user to respond to them, like, hey, your Uber has just arrived, are you actually there? Do you want to confirm the end of your trip? You could hit something like, yep, I'm here, dismiss that notification, and then do some processing in the back end to say, pay the Uber driver or whatever it might be. Our second type of user interface that we have are glances. And so the idea behind a glance is if you're looking at your watch really quick and you just want to get some quick information, it should show you enough to tell you sort of what's going on in your application without actually going into the app. So if you're, once again, we'll just use like Uber. If you're traveling on your Uber drive, you might just have a glance to see where you're at on your path, or something very simple like that, just to give you kind of an idea of current state, right? But it doesn't require any user interaction. You don't actually have to, touch it or do anything with it. The idea is just kind of a simple way to show you where things are at if you were to flick over your wrist and look at the watch quick. Finally, then, we actually have our interface for our application. Okay, and like I said, we've got kind of a simple interface here. We don't have a lot of screen real estate, but building out interfaces for WatchKits, it's pretty straightforward. You basically just grab your items out of your toolbox here. So you can see we've got our different controllers. You grab your different controls, and then you just drag and drop them on to the interface there. A lot of the layout is sort of handled for you, or they have helpers to handle the layout for you. So if we were to look at get time, for example, you can see that my position is set at the left, horizontally on the left. My vertical is set on the top, and then I just tell the width to be relative to the container, right? So it just kind of fits its container. There's no constraints. If you've done iOS development, there's no constraints. We're not setting this to a fixed pixel size or a fixed point size for iOS. It's basically just saying, like, here it is. This is roughly what the size should be, and it will figure out what the size should be, right? Because even now, if we're talking about Apple Watch, there's 2 sizes. So we need to support 2 different size devices, even with the first release. Okay. One other thing to note here about our user interfaces is that we don't have a lot of screen real estate, and on top of that, we can only have up to 10 control elements at a time shown on the user interface. So that includes like grouping elements, buttons. If you're to put labels and things like that, you can only have 10 elements at a time. So once again, that's a restriction that I'm sure will change over time, but as it is right now, I'm not even sure how you would get 10 user interface elements on here, but that's sort of all you're limited to at the moment. Xamarin's made it pretty easy to interact with these items then. So if you have something like get time and you want to use that in your code behind, if we drag it and drop it into our user interface, let's see here. I don't have anything for get time, but if you have a label out here, for example, I have a label and I give it a name of time group. By supplying a name to it, we'll have it available for us to use in our code behind. So we could start interacting with it. We can update the time, or we could put in whatever kind of value we want into that label. If you wanted to interact with any of these items, like for example, this is a button, all you have to do is double click on it, and that will go ahead and register a button click handler for you in your code. I'll show you that in a second. So that's really all that goes into your WatchKit app, right? There's really not a whole lot that fits into there. Like I said, the bulk of the work that you'll be doing are out in WatchKit extensions. So in your WatchKit extensions, after you build your storyboard here, you'll see that I've got 3 different controllers which were added to this extensions project. So I've got my glance for my glance controller, my notification controller, and then finally my interface controller. And if you look at the interface controller, like I had mentioned, if you do something like add a label or a group or whatever you might have in your user interface, it'll map those back to this designer so that you could use it in your code behind. If you have a click, like in this case, I've got my get time button, and if we click on it, we activate it, that brings it into our code behind here so we could actually use it during development. Development then is pretty similar to iOS development. We've got some slightly different lifecycle methods, but it follows roughly the same concept. So you'll see here for our interface controller, we've got a WK interface controller. It's not NS anything or UI anything. In this case, it's WK for WatchKit, for our WatchKit interface controller. But we've got our lifecycle methods out here. So we've got awake, so we know when our application has become awake. We've got our will activate. So basically, this is will activate will be fired off just before your application comes into focus for your user. So it's a great place to do some like last-minute setup. If you're trying to do things like in this case, I've got a timer that I set up here. I just start up that timer and will activate. On did deactivate, same kind of idea. If the watch is, or if your application is going into the background, if I've got a timer or something like that, I could just shut down the timer here and clean up all those resources. If you've got your button click handler, like here, I've got my get time activated. You'll get your interface button passed in, and then you could, react appropriately to whatever your button clicks need to do, things like that. And in this case, what I'm going to do, like I mentioned, is we're going to build this super awesome WatchKit application. It's going to reach back to our phone, and what it's going to do is it's going to ask for the current time, and then it's going to ask the phone for a randomly generated color. And the way that we're going to interact with our phone in this case is using WK interface controller, open parent application. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, parent application, I want to do something, or I want some information from you. Can you supply some information for me? And then back in our iOS application, what we need to do, I've got it open here, is in our app delegate. If you're new to iOS development or if you haven't done much iOS development, our app delegate's kind of like our underlying runner. It's always out there running underneath our application. In our application delegate, we're going to subscribe here to this new method here of handle WatchKit extension request. And then when we get one of those requests, we could go do some work. And when we're done doing that work, we're going to respond with a reply. Okay, so this reply here is just it's just going to be an action that returns a dictionary. Okay, so it's all very like loosely coupled. You just say from your phone, hey, I want to go do something, and then out there on your watch, you say, okay, I'm going to go do something, and I'll give you some data back. And so, like I had mentioned, out here, what we're going to do is extremely complicated. This algorithm took me months to develop. I'm going to generate three random digits for a color, and then we're just going to return back here an NS dictionary, right? That's got our current time in it, and then has those values for our color, right? And I just pass them back as a formatted string that I could parse out later on. So very, very simplistic. Back in our interface controller, then you'll see what we're going to do is we're going to get back here reply and potentially some error information. Maybe we couldn't talk to the phone, Bluetooth was disabled, maybe it wasn't turned on, we ran out of battery, something like that. So what we want to do is just make a quick check and see, did we get any error information? Or maybe did we get no reply from our phone? If that's the case, we're just going to say, nope, didn't get anything. Otherwise, what we could do is just inspect that dictionary, and based on the values that we get returned out, we can update our user interface, right? So we got some kind of simplistic stuff here. We'll look for the time. We'll set our label based on that time, and then we'll set that label's color to white. And we'll also update, there's a grouping container. It's just sort of kind of a container object. We're going to update that group and just set its background color equal to the color that was returned back to us. Okay? If we wanted to run this application, then what we'll do is we're going to need to have two things running. So we need to have our simulator up and running. This is unless you were one of the lucky few to get an Apple Watch. Does anybody here have an Apple Watch? So none of us are the lucky few? Nobody like sacrificed a child? No, nobody did the blood ritual? Okay, got it. If you aren't one of those people, which we all are now, what you need to do is you need to fire up your emulator, or your simulator rather, and inside of your simulator now with the latest version of Xcode, you'll see that we've got this option out here for hardware and external displays. And in the past, you could use this for showing like you could plug in like an HDMI cable, or it's like a, whatever it is, the lightning to HDMI or whatever. Now you have these two options, Apple Watch 38mm and 42mm. And if you include those, you'll see you get kind of this blank canvas of an Apple Watch. It's all black here, so I apologize. It's kind of hard to see. But the idea is if we get that hardware fired up there, we could come out to our project here. Do I have, oh, yep, I've got it already. We've got our extension set as our startup project. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to debug out on that extension. Oh, dear God. Hang on. This is going to be big. Oh, no, we got some kind of a fatal error. Oh, it's even worse. Hang on a second. I'd like to take a moment to note that WatchKit stuff is still pretty early on. So, especially when it comes to like debugging, the debugging is okay, but it's still, it's still pretty early on. And I think it's not even just like a Xamarin thing. The Apple stuff, I see a lot of people talking on Apple forums like, hey, the simulator didn't pick up my app. It's not showing things. So, it always takes a little bit of time. So we'll just get fired back up here again. And hopefully this time we won't crash out. No promises. So we got that there again. We'll give this another run. Just going to start up Mondo here. Oh no. Guys, this is a real bad, it's a bad scene. We'll try a different emulator really quick. Try killing that simulator. Load it back up again. You can do it, little fella. We believe in you. There we go. We'll give this one more shot. Maybe we'll just try running. Try doing this really quick. I'm just going to set my iOS app here to run first. Oh, you know what? Hang on. Don't run it on the 6 Plus. It's disgusting. It's too big. There we go. Get that simulator going. Oh no. Well, what would generally happen is we'd run this application and it's super cool. And everyone's like, Mike, we're going to give you all of our money because we really want this WatchKit app. And I'll be like, no, everybody, you don't have to give me all your money. Later you can. Let me see if I can get this going here. We'll try it one more time. Does anybody know any good jokes? No? Okay. It's fine. We'll give it another shot. I'm wondering if it's because like the resolution is really compressed and weird. I don't know. It seems like a cop-out, but
There was an iOS update.
I didn't apply any updates to anything. Demo time? Apply updates? Sure. We'll give it one more shot. Thinking about it. Uh-oh, yes. We have liftoff. I don't care. Fatal error, doesn't even matter. We're just gonna roll with it. Here's my awesome application. Click at time. It may talk to the simulator. Talk to the simulator. See, it's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. Get that time. Get that time. No, I need it down here, and it needs to be colored. Yeah. This is a bad application, to be honest with you. Oh no, we are in simulator hell. All right, I don't need to take any more time. You guys get the idea. But the big concept here, right, like I was saying, is we can do things. When I click get time, it's going to take that package and it's going to take that packet, reach back over to the phone. I don't even know what's going on with my simulator over here. It's going to reach back over, ask for that information, bring it back, and if everything went well, we'd get this nice little screen that says 710, and it's magenta or some other really fun color. But we'll see if we can get it going again. I don't mean to hold up anybody's time. So there you go. There's a super cool WatchKit app. So I'm going to close this stuff off. We'll try coming back to that later. What I had demonstrated there is one way to get data. There's another really cool library out there, though. If you're looking to do bidirectional communications between WatchKit and your iOS applications, this is called Wormhole Sharp. It is one of the Xamarin guys who put this together. As you can see, kind of in the little GIF here, or GIF, however you want to call it. You can do kind of bidirectional communication. So as they click on the buttons up on top, they get 1, 2, 3. They click the buttons over here. You can see it updates on the bottom, 1, 2, 3. So the way that I showed is kind of, I would say, the approved or sort of the standard way for passing data. Wormhole Sharp is sort of the nice and easier way to do that data passing. So if you're looking to do any iOS app, any WatchKit development, definitely look into that Wormhole Sharp library. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. So the second thing we're going to talk about for today is Android Wear applications. All right, we're going to cover the same kind of things, getting started, talk a little bit about user interface, controls, and development. Right, here's our WatchKit applications. As you can see, kind of cool. You can build all kinds of neat things where you've got your maps out there. You can get your calendar. We'll tell you for your flight and whatnot. You get all your notifications. We've got basically 3 main types of Wear applications. The first and the easiest type of application I would say that you could build out there are just notifications. So if anybody's doing notifications for iOS, or excuse me, for Android in general today, it's a very easy step to transition over and do notifications that will also update your Wear devices. So just if you grab the latest AppCompat library, which is Google's libraries for building in new features, you can make the switch over to doing push notifications for Wear devices in just a few lines of code. So pretty easy, just like you would do it in your regular Android notification center. The next type of apps are watch faces. So they have their own SDKs out there for building watch faces. You can make your watch faces do anything and everything. Be careful, obviously, if you're using a ton of CPU, you'll probably burn down the watch. But yep, you've got your own separate SDK out there for building watch faces by themselves. And finally, what we'll look at here today are companion apps, right? Similar conceptually to the WatchKit apps where we could build applications that run out on our watch here. The biggest differences we'll see is we can actually build applications that run on the watch, not on the phone with Android. So, and I'll show that here in just a moment. Before you get started doing anything for Android Wear, do jump out to the Android SDK Manager. There are some new bits that you need to get. Specifically, you need to make sure that you have support for Android 5.0.1. It's API 21 at a minimum. And that's going to come with a few things. They'll give you the SDKs to actually build and compile an app that will run out on Android Wear. And it will also give you access to the emulators so you can test these things out. So here you can see I've got it's Android TV, but down here we've got our Android Wear emulators. Just make sure you get those installed so you could use those for your application development as well. Yes?
Curiosity, will those run through native emulator, or will they run through Genymotion or something like that?
No Genymotion or Xamarin stuff yet. It always takes a while because I think they wait until they open source all that stuff, then they can put it into a virtual machine. Surprisingly, though, if you get the Intel version of it, it runs fairly well. I mean, so it's not like when you're running an app and it's kind of a slideshow if you're using the native emulators. These run pretty well. I assume it's just because it's not doing quite as much, so the emulation's probably not as difficult. And once you get those SDKs installed, you should have access to build out a few new different devices. So just come out here once again. into your AVD manager. This is your Android Virtual Device Manager. And you can build two different types of Wear devices. So you've got your round Wear devices, so it's something like this that has a round watch face, or you have your square watch faces as well. So we got a square watch face. Perfect. So we got you could demo all these things up here. Perfect. If you'd like to, you can. Yeah, so you could build out. So yeah, so you make sure you do develop, or you probably want to make sure you build an emulator for both of these, just because they behave a little bit different. And I'll show you when we're doing development why it's important that we have two of those as well. Okay, this is just building out our emulator. I won't spend too much time on here. So when we build our Android Wear apps, you'll notice that we've kind of got two separate pieces here. We have our Android app and our Wear app. As of right now, you still do need to have a container Android app to distribute our Wear apps. You know, the application, it's just could be kind of a stub application. Maybe use it for settings. But for the most part, all you're going to be using it for is for distribution. And what you'll do is you'll take your Wear app, put it into your Android app, and use that for when you put it out onto the Play Store. If you want, though, you could, like if you're developing this for yourself, you could do everything just with the Wear app by itself. I think that's probably a limitation that they'll lift in the future as well. But for right now, you do need to have a companion Android app to go along with your Wear application. Biggest difference here, though, is you'll notice that there is no direct link between the two. So when you're building a Wear app, you could do all of your processing on that device. Now, you don't have to. You know, if you want to get things like GPS, if you want to get hardware information off of your phone or something like that, you could still talk back to your phone or to your device. But if you want to, you could just do simple calculations and things like that out in the Wear app. Okay, things to note. Okay, you need to be on at least Android 4.3, which means 60% of the Android people out there are excluded. Forget about them anyway. They're probably running garbage old Android phones, and we don't want to build applications for them. Make them update. Come on, let's get some new Android people out there already. Get your Android Wear app, right? You will need to have Bluetooth LE. So once again, you need to have the newer Bluetooth spec on that phone. If you have something that's running 4.3, chances are it probably also has Bluetooth LE on there as well. If you're not sure if your device is compatible, you could go to that link there on the screen, g.co/wearcheck, and that will tell you whether or not Wear apps are available for your device. Okay, like I mentioned before, Wear apps are just like regular Android apps. Okay, you can develop for them kind of just the same way that we do regular Android apps, and we're even going to start off with core activity, right? So if you've ever done any Android development, congratulations, you're also Android Wear developers, because it's like the exact same thing. The only big thing that we'll see here that changes up on us is our core layout item is going to be this thing called a watch view stub. And a watch view stub is going to control whether we're running our application on a circular device or a square device. But everything else is about the same. And then also, WatchKit, our Wear apps come in all shapes and sizes, so just need to consider that. Xamarin Studio is really nice here, so you don't have to jump out. Kind of like what we saw out there for iOS, we've got built-in support for doing all of our UI design straight in Xamarin Studio or Visual Studio. Works just like if you've used the Visual Designer in Xamarin Studio or Visual Studio before. The biggest difference being we just have our nice layouts here for our circular or our square devices, and I'll show you that a little bit more in depth. When it comes to development, like I said, we're kind of still doing the same Android development we've always been doing, but one of the key things that you'll notice here is that our root item for our layouts is now this thing called Watch View Stub. Okay, Watch View Stub's just kind of like any other root layout element for Android. We've got our ID that we're going to assign to it. We're going to tell it to fit our container, so we'll say match parent for height and width. But one of the items that you'll notice in here are under the app namespace for rect layout. So we're going to say if you're running this on a rectangular device, what you should really do is use this other layout over here. Whereas if you're running on a round device, go use that other layout over there. There's a couple other namespaces in here for tools. You don't have to have these in here. These are just for the tooling to know how to build and display things. When it comes to runtime, those namespaces will actually get excluded, but it's just to help the designers and things like that know that you're developing for a Wear device. So if you don't want to have the tools namespace in there, you can pull it out. The key things, though, are these that app namespace with the rect layout and round layout. Okay, so then if we were to look back at our project here, you'll see I've got, and this once again might be a little bit hard to read, so I apologize. We've got our layout folder here for Android. We had our main layout, which is what we were just looking at, but then inside of there we've got rectangle main and round main, right? And rectangle main and round main is actually where we're going to build our user interface for our Android Wear devices. Azure's down, as always. We've got our round device over here, right? And I mean, as always, apologize. We use Azure a lot. It's great. I love Microsoft. But you can see you can customize your user interface here. So if you look at our rectangular, I'm a rect, tap me, right? Oh, that sounded awful. I'm round, tap me. I apologize to everybody. Building our Android Wear applications, and just like building out any other Android app in terms of our project templates. So if you come out here to Android app, you'll see we've got general, and then we're just going to create an Android Wear application, but no big difference from there. All right, so let's go and actually see a demo. Let's go see some code running. So I'm going to fire back up Xamarin Studio one more time. Xamarin Studio? Xamarin Studio itself is free. So depending on what kind of applications you're looking to build, you might have to have a different license of Xamarin. But yeah, you could go download Xamarin Studio today and start messing around with stuff. For sure. Give it a second here just to load up our project. Bouncing ball of death. There we go. Okay, so we see our Android Wear app. There we go. Great. That actually makes it a little bigger. So you can see we've got our, in here I've got an Android Wearables Droid project, and it's just one singular project. You know, while we're doing development, you don't have to have that companion app. We can do our development, we can debug it and everything like that. It really just comes down to when we want to do distribution that we have to put this in a host app. So while you're doing development, you could do it all just as one project. That's perfectly fine. If we were to kind of peruse through our project file here, you'll see we've got our sort of regular things that we see in all of our other Android projects, our assets, we've got our properties out here, our resources, right? We've got all our different drawables. The first big difference, like I mentioned before, is we have our primary or our main layout. And our main layout really isn't going to be anything. It's just sort of a placeholder out there. So I'll give it a heartbeat to fire up. Right, just sort of a heartbeat, or just sort of a stub for our actual application. If you were to jump back to that source, it's that source that we just saw a minute ago. We got our definitions out here for our rectangular layout, which is pointing back to rectangle main, and then our round layout, which is going back to round main. But this is, you know, here by itself, it's really not doing much, right? There's really nothing to this. All of the fun stuff then comes out here in our layouts specifically for our different devices, right? So in rectangular main, you can see it's going to pull up the interface. It says, I'm rectangular, tap me. If you want to, it's a little bit hard to see on here, but there is a sort of a drop-down button on the top, and you could change your device. So if you want to see what something looks like for square or for round, right, we could change the device on the fly. This is being built for a rectangular user interface. So if you look, right, it says I'm rect. This is going to be awful. Tap me. It kind of cuts off things on the top there. It doesn't look very good. So what we might want to do is customize this user interface so it looks better on a round device. So if you look at our round implementation here, right, we use the full screen real estate so that that button centers, you can see the text, everything's good. In terms of functionality, though, just like if you're developing an Android application to run on phones and tablets and blah, 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 everything else, make sure you keep your naming consistent so that if you have a button that's on one screen that might be on another screen, you give those buttons the same name so that when you click on them, they fire off the same series of events underneath, right? And doing our development then, so if we come out to our main activity, get this opened up, get that sized out there. You can see it looks a lot like any other activity that we've built for Android. Start out with our base class here of activity. We've got the same style, same life cycle for the most part. We've got our onCreate. One of the biggest differences that you'll notice here, though, is although we have our same general lifestyle or life cycle, things like onCreate, on pause, on resume, and stuff like that, we're not going to have our user interface hydrated in the same way, so it's not going to be available to us at the same time that we might be accustomed to. In this case, what we have to do is we want to find our watch view stub, and our watch view stub is then going to emit this event called layout inflated. And once layout inflated has been called, then we have access to our layout items. Then we have access to our user interface. So because the watch view stub needs to decide, am I square, am I rectangular, what am I, we'll wait and listen for this event to fire off. And then once that does go, we could then inspect and find all of our different user interface controls and use those for our application. This app that I built is super basic, but all it's going to do is when our user clicks on our button. I'm using some reactive stuff. If you're wondering what this garbage is here, just ignore it for a second. But we're gonna click our button, and when we get that button click event, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fire off a notification using that app compat notification builder. So like I said, if you want to build in or add Android Wear notifications into your applications, it's super easy to do. So here in this case, you see I use notification compat builder. I'm just going to do something very silly. It's going to say I've got a button tapped. We're going to count the number of taps that we've done and give it some coloring, some grouping. And then basically what we're going to do is we're just going to fire off to our notification manager, and we're going to notify. We're going to push, rather, our notification out there. And then we'll update our user interface and tell it, hey, go check your notification. Right? So super easy, very, very simplistic application. If we switch over to here, hopefully we'll have some better luck. Let's switch. I'm going to go to our round emulator here. This is up from earlier. It's kind of neat. The emulators, like I said, they're not the great emulators. Some of the better emulators, like Genymotion or Xamarin.Android player, they're the built-in emulators for right now. But if you can get the Android or the Intel-based emulator, it runs pretty good. It's pretty acceptable. And you could create either your round or your square user interface. What's neat about that is we'll actually put a mask on the UI. So in this case, you can see I've got a round. This is for a round Android Wear device, and I put that circular mask. Here's our awesome app, right? I'm round. Tap me. Could sit out here and tap. See how many times I could tap. Pretty good tapper. Then we can go back. There's kind of a home button, a hidden home button up here on the top. And by doing that, it says, hey, Mike, great. You've tapped 43 times. So once again, $1 million idea. It's the Tap Master Pro. It's a free download with a $199 micro transaction. Yeah.
Is that home button mapped to like the side button on a watch?
It's equivalent. Some of them don't have. I think some devices don't have side buttons, but they've got like this one has a side button, and then there's it's like a light sensor or whatever that is. So if you hold your hand kind of on the bottom of it, if you hold your finger on the bottom of it, it could simulate that. But yeah, it's the same idea as hitting your kind of going up to your home button. So, but that's it. There's no there's no volume control. There's no anything else, right? It's either that or shut it off, right? So, but yeah, that gives you that functionality. And you can interact with it too. If you want to swipe to the right, swipe to the left, you could use these. And that, like I mentioned, it's pretty responsive. So you don't need to have one of those better emulators. This is probably pretty good and pretty representative of what you would see in your application. This is a simple app, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what it looks like to do that development. Like I said, it's pretty close to regular Android development. There are APIs, or there are parts of the SDK available to do communications back to the phone as well, or to your device as well. So if you're looking to do something like that, where you want to say, hey, I want to get GPS information, or maybe I want to pull some pictures or do something on the phone, you could do all that as well in Android Wear. But if you don't want to, you can exist just on the watch.
Do you have to use the stock Android emulator for them to talk to each other?
You don't. You mean if you want to have your Wear application I've only ever done it, to be honest with you, I've only ever done it on here, on the emulator, just on the device. And then everything else I've got my phone and this I've done. So I don't know. You have to open up like, it's kind of convoluted. You have to like open up a port. I think you could use Genymotion. I haven't done it myself, but you have to like open up a port on your emulator so that they can communicate. So I don't see why you couldn't, but I've done all the development on here. You've got an Android Wear application that you install on here, and then you tell it to start debugging via ADB, kind of like you would on your regular device. Then it feeds everything through it. So it's not too bad. Yeah, not terribly difficult. Some kind of tips here. First, these wearables are pretty bad right now. They're not good. Their batteries are awful. I don't know about your watch. Maybe you're the best watch. If I can get this thing to make it to like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I'm pretty stoked.
2 days.
2 days?
Mine lasts 2 days.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing on this thing. I like check the time periodically. You got the same one, right?
Yeah.
I probably got a dud. I'm not sure. I gotta quit. I'm like checking the time all the time. Get the hell out of here. But oh, I've got every single notification on there, so I'm sure that's what it's burning through, just the Bluetooth communication.
With the watch and communicate with the watch, yes. The more you use it, the more you're gonna, the shorter the battery life.
So it's a really cool device if you just keep it on your wrist and don't ever turn it on. It'll last forever. It looks cool. You get compliments. But you got to be, so the key thing here is, especially on our Android Wear, you can just like start running applications and let them run. So you do need to be, it's kind of like back to early Android development. Be very careful with what you're doing or you will burn down the device pretty quick. Next thing here, they're terribly slow. I think this watch in particular has the same CPU that a Nexus 1 had, which is like that was the first flagship Nexus device, which was awesome in its day, but is now a, pile of garbage. So it's good enough if you're just doing light things, but don't expect to be calculating pi or doing something, exactly complicated there. Another thing, your wearables don't have a keyboard. So, we are software developers, and we're always thinking probably like software developers and want to put every little feature and nook and cranny and everything like that on our user interfaces. Like I mentioned, on iOS, you're limited to just 10 user interface controls. And you really don't have a lot of good ways to input. On both iOS and Android, though, there's really good support for doing like voice commands and things like that. So if I were to start up my phone, I could say, hey, Google, or OK, Google, start a run, and it will just go ahead and start up my running application and go do it. You could respond to voice commands, and it's really easy to do. So don't try and build like, actually, go ahead, build a calculator. If you can make a calculator on your watch, it'd be pretty cool. Emulate like those old Casio things, but in any case, use kind of the use things for doing voice commands and stuff like that. It's super Dick Tracy, and you'll feel cool building it that way. The other thing, and this came up here recently when I was talking to one of our construction company clients. You need to build and make these interfaces super like simple and dumb. I don't have the world's biggest hands. And some of those construction dudes have like index fingers that are as wide as like, 2 of my fingers together. So if you're trying to build this real precise interface, you can't do it, So just make sure that you build it like preschool style, very simplistic user interface. Make it so that, your users are probably, if people are only looking at their phones for 3 seconds, they're only looking at the watch for, half a second. Make sure it's super easy to get their information and consume it, extremely easy to interact with it. And then finally, right, have fun with these things. They're brand new devices. There's a whole new set of applications that are coming out there. I've got about 500,000 dumb ideas if anybody wants me to tell them to you later on. Most of them involve farts and terrible things. Anyway, got little boys. We've got bad ideas for things. That would be fun. But anyway, lots of cool stuff you could do with these things. It's kind of only the beginning. It's sort of just like we had with the phones. You're going to see a lot of kind of silly applications, but soon enough these will be things that people probably have multiple of. And I say that now. We'll be here 5 years from now, and I'll have like my Google glasses, my Google belt buckle, my like Iron Man chest thing. That'll be totally cool. And I'll be like, God, 2015 Mike was such a toothless hillbilly, So like, these are really cool devices. They're going to be everywhere. So yeah. And that concludes everything I got from a high level here. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, my name is Mike Stonis, and there's all my contact information over there. So yeah, thank you. Leave it open for questions, comments.
Anyone have any questions for Mike?
Yeah.
So this is for Android Wear. Does it automatically detect the shape of the watch and then pick the round versus square based on that?
You got to tell it. So back in that layout.
Right.
Oh, sorry. You want to take a picture? Go ahead. When you set up your initial layout, what you're going to do in that watch view stub. So let me see if I can get that back here really fast.
There's the two templates. Does it just switch between those like based on?
It will. Yeah, right. The watch, I assume the manufacturer has to say, like, this is square, or this is a rectangular, or this is circular.
Does it have anything for, like, I know the Moto 360 has, like, the little flat tire on the bottom. Is there any way from the software to detect, like, if that's the kind of watch they have?
Oh, look at, oh, man, something bad's going on over here. If it's like a Moto 360, like if it's got kind of like this one, like it's got that little thing on the bottom.
And I know, like, there's different resolution.
It considers that, so yeah, a few things there. Let's see if I can get this back open again. So it's just going to consider like the 360 to be circular. So, I mean, at this point in time, expect that, you know, it's kind of like almost a shrunken square in a lot of ways because the tops and the sides might actually be cut off even though it's circular, you know. The other ways that you could handle the different resolutions is just like you would do for different pixel densities for regular Android development. So we've got, let this get open here in just a heartbeat. Different display sizes, densities, and stuff like that. So hopefully this will get open here. Maybe.
Stable or alpha?
This is on stable. Yeah, it's been good. I think there's something weird going on with like the resolution. That's the only thing I could think of. I don't know what else had changed here. But if you see out here, like in our resources directory, if you want to handle, as you can't see out here in our resources directory. Oh my God. I'm gonna take off. Let me do this. We can look at it. Just. Go out here to Droid. As you can see out here in our resources directory, you could do things like flag drawables as HDMI, MDPI. What that's going to do is it's going to target different display densities. And then there's different attributes you could put on there as well. You could chain these things together. So if you want to have you know, different drawables that are just out there for, you know, the circular display, I think they've just included those. I can't remember the API, but they've got different attributes you could put on there to only use those drawables, only use potentially those layouts as well, just for those devices. So yeah, so you can supply. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir. We got one in the back. The back.
So obviously I'm new to this, right? Is there a link that gives me all of the events that the phone can listen to? And for example, can the phone listen for something, react, and then notify the watch that it actually do something?
Yep. So there's a whole set of Wear SDKs. It's a great question and a great place to go for that.
I assume the phone can react to more things than the watch.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like essentially, what you would do from your watch is you would just say, "Hey, I want this kind of information." So you kind of like send it, you know, call it like a tag that, you know, signifies to the watch. You kind of wait there and you listen for it and you say, "Oh, okay, you're asking for GPS information. Let me go gather that for you, and then I can deliver it back in the payload." And so, yeah, so the wire, you know, your phone or whatever it is could go do whatever it normally can do, right? And then it could respond back to your watch. If you're looking to build out something, you could go out to its developer.xamarin.com, and if you just search for Android Wear, they've got a whole big series of tutorials and then really good sample applications out here as well to show you how to do the different interaction. And I believe to do what you're asking, I believe that's this Eliza chat will actually interact with the phone and get information. It's one of these ones. I might be lying to you, but I believe it's the Eliza chat one has bidirectional communication, so you could talk to your device and come back. But great place. This is a great site. If anybody hasn't been, if you're new to Xamarin development, developer.xamarin.com. They've got like a half a gazillion GitHub repos with sample code on everything. They've got teams of people that are always out here writing different content. How to work with anything in Android. Guides on how to do things with screen sizing, packaging, and stuff like that. And they're constantly updating it. So if you're new to Xamarin development, just start at developer.xamarin.com. Like I mentioned, if you're looking for Android Wear, you can come out here and search for Android Wear. If you're interested in WatchKit, got a whole guide section out here as well, just for WatchKit. So how to install it, how to get it set up, all your different controls, your different interfaces, all that kind of great stuff they've got out there. Another question up here?
Yeah, it used to be that they said before people would buy expensive hardware, there had to be a killer app. So why are you people buying these things? What makes this better than just a watch and a phone?
I mean, right now.
How much are these things?
So yeah, so the Android devices are very inexpensive in comparison.
This was $230. When I first came out, it was $300.
Yeah, and now like
This is $180 now.
yeah, I was gonna say I think those are down to like less than $200 for a pretty good.
I can get a fake Roland. And the battery never runs down.
And a guy had one of these, and he actually had found a Rolex watch face like hack. So he had the whole Rolex thing going on. I got a Rolex.
It's the Molex, the Motor X or Moto X. So the Android ones are quite a bit cheaper now. So you're looking like the lowest I think I've seen is like 150 and on up, and then the Apple Watch is 400 starting.
350 plus.
350.
400. The second level is 700, and mind you, the actual metal band.
Yeah.
The metal band for the Apple Watch costs more than the starting watch. It costs $450 just for the band.
For real though, have you seen that band? It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's like chainmail and it's got a magnet on it. Oh my god, it's the coolest thing. Yeah.
It's a must-have.
You must, right. I mean, you've been brainwashed.
But I mean, I know we're all high-end developers, so the $17,000 Apple Watch is nothing.
I've got a few on their way.
I have Apple stock, so I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's really no like killer app. I think the big thing that's been drawing people, if you look at sort of the like a lot of the Fitbit and stuff like that, it's a lot of the fitness applications. So like this one's got a built-in heartbeat sensor on the back of it. A lot of them have that kind of functionality. So right now I say it's people that are buying it are early adopters, the people that are just going to go and buy whatever. I had a client that said like, hey, we're interested in doing watch stuff. So I was like, oh, it gives me a good reason to go expense and get myself a watch, right? But like for the most part, right now there is no killer app. There is no Snapchat app. I mean, wait for that. It's coming out soon, probably. Like weird camera. If you get a camera on here, it's gonna get weird real fast. Anyway, but yeah, there's really no. I don't think there's anything that's like a must-have. It's probably the fitness stuff though that I would say is the biggest draw.
Just so you guys know, when you're exercising, if your heart actually does stop, you don't need a watch.
It's a built-in notification system.
Yeah. By the time it does that, you won't check your watch.
Practice on the tape.
Right. That's your main alert right there. Concrete.
The round ones come with cameras, don't they?
What's that?
The round ones or cameras?
I thought I saw one that had a camera on it. This one doesn't. No.
The Apple Watch. No camera on the phone. I mean, the first ones that came out, they did have cameras.
I saw some that had it on the side.
Yeah, I'm wondering why yours don't. I mean, the newer ones don't.
Yeah. It was probably like a privacy thing. It was probably like that one engineer that's like in the bathroom and he's like, oh dear God, we can't let this go live. And then the other engineer next to him was like, oh dear God, this must go live now.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dick Tracy. That's the thing that would make if I can, instead of dialing and all this stuff, if I could just say, hey, I left my car keys, make sure, whatever.
And that you could do. I mean, if you ever used like, there's Siri for iOS or
Google Now.
yeah, the Google Now stuff, you have that same voice dictation that you could do here. On the Google Now voice dictation is like very good at this point in time. You know, it's gotten a lot better. So yeah, go pick up kids from school, send me a note, or in 15 minutes set an alarm. I could say, okay, Google, in 15 minutes set an alarm. It will go set up an alarm, and it's there.
That would be a killer app.
So it's got that.
I have an app.
But I would rather have the Star Trek than where you just tap the thing.
Awesome. That's pretty cool.
But you could make that. I mean,
I will.
there you go. See, all you do is you get one of these and take the strap off it, just hang it.
Right. That would be better. And then you can have the camera.
Sure. It'll be like if anybody saw the movie Her. I don't know, I'm probably the only person who saw that.
That's an old movie.
I've heard great things.
Yeah, it's a great flick, and like the sad future that all of us are probably going to be living in. Anyway.
And Lenovo actually announced yesterday a watch where it actually has a hidden projected screen. So you actually have a normal screen, and then if you look at it closely at a particular angle, it actually projects the screen into that you can see. So it's just like a private secret.
Incredible.
I'm not going to satisfy as loud a holographic screen. I want to go.
They have those Pico projectors, right? So soon they get those.
Well, they have the virtual ones that you try to table.
No, it has to be right here.
Yeah.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I
You're my only
think
hope.
right now, I think the thing with wearables is that nobody knows where it's going.
Just on their chest. Don't move. Hang on. I gotta just
I think if Mike knew where it was going, he'd be like,
I wouldn't be
I'm
here.
going to make a lot of money, and I'm not going to tell you guys.
I'd be out living in a cabin somewhere.
I think the
Breaking
belt
in
buckle idea will work well in Texas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, belt buckle, you walk in, right? You got your push notification, you got the
I think they developed the belt buckle because
I got tons of dumb dad jokes, I apologize.
Wasn't there, so many restrictions with people walking into public places like nightclubs and things with that camera phone?
I
I heard a lot of disputes in Western program on that.
It's a problem right now.
People are against being filmed on someone else's camera.
It's a problem right now. As I said, I got a couple little kids. I got a 6- and an 8-year-old. When they grow up, they'll be like, Dad, what is wrong with you? You weren't, on what's that, the new one where you could Periscope or whatever, where you could just start filming stuff and you could just film wherever you're at and broadcast it online. Yeah, it's just going to be live streaming everything that they do. All their friends will be live streaming while they sit there and watch other people play video games. They'll be live streaming themselves watching somebody play Minecraft on Twitch, while that person is live streaming themselves watching somebody play Minecraft on Twitch. Right, on their virtual reality. So anyway. But yeah, any other questions, comments, ideas? Like I said, big thing, it's still very early on. Some of the SDKs are a little bit rough. Like I said, the iOS stuff is pretty well constrained, but give it another year or so. It'll be just like it was before, and you'll have full APIs available to us. You'll be able to build really cool things. So. All right, so I'll be hanging around here if anybody has questions. Otherwise, I'm going to start kind of unplugging here. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you very much.